All right, welcome everyone at Thursday's Delegate Office Hour. I'm Thomas Flitter with GovComms. Thank you for joining us today. We have a couple of things we want to cover before we get into the meat of the meeting here. First off, we certainly want to encourage good engagement. So if you will, please use our chat feature. And also during the call, if you can use the raise hand feature so everybody can have a chance to speak or ask questions. So today we had a couple of things. First, Artem's going to join us here in a little while. He's got some follow-up information he wants to cover with everyone just for a minute. And I wanted to go over first the Delegate Office Hour poll. We didn't have too much participation, but that's okay. We had 3 votes, which kind of helps us lead into what folks want to talk about, lead into the topic for here today. We had 3 votes. One was the live vote discussion, SPF for legal domain work on greenlit collateral. Other was a vote for MIP 72, Success Capital Arranger application, and then a vote for no topic open mic. So also I wanted to see is Raphael on? He is not on yet. I don't know if he wanted to follow up on his project he's working on as well. So I will open this up to the floor since we had 3 votes on the poll. I just wanted to see where I'll open the floor to see where we want to start off with. So I know there's been a lot of talk with the end game plan with Froon's conversation and some other things, but I will open the floor to see where we want to get started. I don't know, Peyton, did you want to add anything for discussion, or wasn't sure?
No, I got my own show, so whatever the delegates want to talk about is fine. But
yeah, all right. So, do we want to go with the live vote for SPF for legal domain work, or MIP 72, or do we just want to keep it open today and see what's on everybody's mind, and we can get started? I'll open the floor.
As of now, it looks like the greenlit poll passed for the legal domain work.
Okay.
Right. I mean, I guess since strategic finance is here, and cameras are on, if they want to add something that they haven't already said for the record, they can. But not particularly sure if that's actually what folks want to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate
the votes
the trust from it. Yeah, I missed the end of the votes. Appreciate it. We'll use it judiciously, and hopefully we won't have to make another request after we're done, but we did our best to communicate that there may have to be a second request for further funding.
All right, thank you, Adrian, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Paper says, let's move along, says it's done. So again, I'll just open the floor, and there's a lot of thoughts. Tim or Raphael?
I'm here to be grilled by Paper and by others if they have any specific questions around Lido.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just interested, like, basically for me the we're so okay, let me zoom out. So basically I think core units working for other DAOs is basically a good thing, especially like at the moment with Lido, because Maker is interfacing with Lido more if the endgame plan passes, right? But that being said, I think there's part of the endgame plan is pretty extreme pressure to reduce costs. And at that point, I think what I'm asking is since you are kind of developing the same tools for Lido that you are developing for Maker, if these two DAOs then shouldn't kind of share your bill instead of increasing it. You know what I mean? It's like, that's my thinking, because if we really need to get the budget down to half of what it is now, I think this is like a very extreme pressure on expenses, and then we really have to like leave no stone unturned in a way. So that was my thinking.
Yeah, so I think Rune is addressing a lot of the budget reductions himself, as you may have seen in the endgame map. If we're kind of taking a step back from the reductions given that, if I think SES may still be working on their project-based budgeting initiative, but we're working on other more important initiatives while Rune kind of handles what he wants to do. Given that he is a super significant part of the active voting tokens, I think what he decides will likely be voted in. So when it comes to budgets, you might want to speak with him if there's specific areas that you want to cut. I think it's throughout this whole process, it's been extremely unclear what SF's involvement in the endgame plan is, if it will be involved at all even. There's also a active offboarding post, which I don't think anyone on this call has addressed. I think it's important to understand that Core Unit's relationship with the DAO is a two-way street, and I think our Core Unit's been politically caught in the crossfire at times. And we're happy to have these conversations publicly. We disclosed exactly who we were in all these proposals, which are also public proposals. We could have done this privately under separate anons, like a lot of other people do. We could have asked to have the proposal be done privately as well, which other people do, so they don't receive this sort of attention. And understand there's a confluence of factors that I think are increasing why people feel that this is a big deal. Particularly, Rune has a very large stake in Lido. He's also looking to potentially sell that for more MKR, and he also feels strongly about acquiring a lot of STE since it's a strong decentralized asset. I had no knowledge of him wanting to empower SF with these tasks and have that become part of our mandate, or his desire for us to help facilitate some of the real finance work that there's kind of a gap in the DAO right now with the team being offboarded. So understanding that things are extremely fluid right now, we would appreciate that people look at this from our perspective, where this huge MIP is changing a lot of things for us as well, things that we were not in the loop about. And I think people are drawing a lot of conclusions and conspiracies that I think don't really add up if you look at this objectively. But I'm happy to address any questions or concerns that people have.
Yeah, I think I articulated my concerns. So I'm not sure if I'm drawing any conspiracies here, but happy to be corrected here. Basically, for me, my issue is like how the DAO learned about this in the first place, and then I think the second concern was about budgets. Like, these were my two main concerns. I'm not clear if I'm really insinuating any conspiracies here. If so, then please let me know, because
broadly, given what I've read, and to address the first post, we are not being paid by Lido today. There's an active snapshot proposal that ends this week, and that was our plan is if that proposal passed, we would then disclose it to the community. And there's a ton of people with other working for other DAOs, can compensate from other DAOs, protocols, companies that aren't disclosed anywhere. People using different identities. But point is well taken that given I guess SF's increased role in the endgame plan, that we try and be a leader in transparency, and we indeed believe we should have shared this proposal before it's fully up. As it relates to budgets, again, I'll just reiterate that we're kind of taking a step back from facilitating the process, since Rune wants to work on that stuff himself.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Raphael. Code Knight's got his hand raised. Code Knight, we're coming over to you now. You have the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, how was it determined that strategic finance would play such a large role in the endgame plan? I haven't seen any public discussion, I've been following it, that really even mentions strategic finance. So I just want to know, like, from your end, what kind of conversations went into that being included?
Yeah, I mean, we are surprised as you are, to be honest. I mean, I've obviously had conversations with her in private, but it never was discussed that we would get authority over rolled assets. Obviously, I've been talking to him about MakerDAOs, protector MakerDAOs, and working with other people that are working on the endgame plan. But when he disclosed that and the proposal, it was a surprise to me.
Okay,
so
thanks.
I think you might want to ask Rune on the call today.
Yeah, well, that is very interesting to know. I'm glad. So it was kind of just Rune. Maybe he talked to someone else, and the strategic finance was unaware that he was going to put all this in there. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, so we did have a call with the delegates last week about some other MIPS that are being worked on related to like RWA type deals, and I don't want to like speculate or put words in Rune's mouth, but that may have been a factor in his decision. Also, that Sebastian formerly led that RWF core unit, and is really the only one with any knowledge of that business left in the DAO that's actively working. And also I'm working with Christian as well on MakerDAO work. So maybe those were factors that Rune took into account. But yeah, again, I just would request that you ask him directly, since we weren't involved in that decision. I think there are others that were involved in that decision, but we were not.
All right. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. We've got a couple of comments in the chat. I just want to make sure that we're covering some of these as well. Adrian says we're still 100% clear. It's the whole CU paper. There's a lot of questions we have also. And also, Robert just had CS. Oh, here we go. So Robert, CES, has deep operational knowledge with real world assets. Just throwing some comments there. And if anybody wants to speak on some of the chat comments that you posted.
I just pointed clarification that from an implementation perspective, I don't think there's any core unit that has more experience than CES. So I don't agree with the statement. That's all.
Thank you, Robert.
I guess the point that I'm making is that Sebastian led the World Finance team. He's been heavily involved in that throughout the transition. I understand that CS has a lot of expertise onboarding world asset collaterals, and I don't really see anything changing too significantly in the grand scheme of things when it comes to onboarding collateral right now.
We'll have to agree to disagree.
All right. Thank you, guys. Peyton raises a question too. Is it a concern of overlap of work for a protocol that is part of the collateral strategy for Maker? Do you have any plans on how the SF will respond to an ask to evaluate Lido stake ETH options, or likewise if Lido decides to propose changes for the vault? So I'm just going to throw that out there from the chat. I'll open the floor.
So I think Rune is really dictating the collateral strategy as it relates to RDBAs through the endgame MIPS. And we'll literally just be following what's, if those MIPS pass, we'll be, following exactly what the MIPS state. We're not going to be making discretionary decisions, and we'll try and be transparent as possible for, if anyone wants to accumulate, ETH, a mix of staked ETH, or just staked ETH. I think his thinking is evolving in that regard. But I haven't really spoken with him about it, so I don't really want to speculate on his plans.
Thank you, Mark.
So like a practical example, I guess, like you do a lot of modeling for our revenue and basically cost assumptions. So like, will you consider raising staked ETH stability fees, for instance? Like, it's just basically there's likely to be a lot of situations where you're asked to make a neutral judgment, and you have this obligation. So I was just wondering if you had a structure within the team to work that out, or kind of like a party line that you'll be towing, so it's very clear to the community. I guess that
it's related to like vault stability fees.
Yeah, so like when you do your monthly roundups, right? A big part is looking at how much we earned, and then future forecasting. Like, okay, here's how much we can reasonably expect to make. That involves predicting a large chunk of Lido, how much we bring in and how much we charge for it. So I just think that kind of sets up for some spots where, if there's community distrust, that's going to be a spot they raise the alarms on. But if the community trusts you and you have a process in place, it's like can be very clearly described as like, hey, here's what we're doing, here's why this won't affect us.
Is this from Lido or Maker's perspective? Because
from Makers.
From Maker's perspective, it sounds like you're talking about the MOMC, which I'm not involved with. So as it relates to stability fee rates, yeah, I have no influence over what the people on the MOMC decide for each collateral, including ST, ETH, or ETH.
But for what it's worth, so I think to point directly, I think the idea that we had was there are collaborators who are purely on Lido, there are collaborators who are purely on Maker and StratFi. And anyway, I think one of the virtues of this space is that all of the data is essentially open. So you don't actually have to take our results for granted. You can actually double check our work and look on the blockchain. And I think this is what keeps essentially any type of financial reporting activity honest, and is a substantial improvement over the traditional corporate world where everything is closed and you have to kind of assume that people are obeying the law. The other thing is that when it comes to forward-looking forecasts, we actually don't do a lot of this at all. Like when we do it, we are very clear about the punctuality of these assumptions, and they tend to be extremely, extremely simplified. Something like, last month times 12 or something stupid like this. For any number of reasons, the first of which being that it's near impossible to try and make predictions in this space at the moment. So you won't actually see that type of work product coming from our core unit today or in the future. When we do project it, it's, for things like operational decisions of like, okay, this is the cost, this is the... Yeah, fair enough. I mean, ultimately, we are not actually making any decisions, right? So we're only trying to arm the community with the best possible information that they can use to make the right decisions. But ultimately, it's token holders vote, the MOMC that suggests rate changes, and the executive spell that sets the level. And the point is that all of this is essentially fully auditable. And I think this is actually one of the small kinks that allows this type of cross-DAO collaboration to happen in a healthy way. And we do have debates on the GNRs often, right? I mean, I want to turn the Aave D3M back on for a while, but who am I to say?
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I hope it, yeah.
I just think like having something structurally in place and then telling the community that goes a long way. Like that's one of the reasons we always have multiple governance facilitators, because there could be a situation where I have a conflict of interest, or someone in the community thinks I have a conflict of interest, and whether it's true or not, it can just be easy for me to say, all right, well, you know what, well, Patrick's going to be the sole decider on this. I'm going to completely remove myself. Then the community doesn't have to worry about that conflict coming in.
Yeah, that's an interesting build, actually. And to be clear, I mean, we're kind of learning as we go along also. I mean, this is not only a very nascent space, but this partnership, as we're thinking of it, is extremely nascent. Like, it's just an idea that we had of organizing ourselves so that we could do more of the work that we are passionate about in protocols that we are also passionate about. So, you know, I think based on your experience, it sounds like we have much to learn also. So yeah, I look forward to exchanging views and experiences based on this.
All right. Thank you, Adrian. And thank you, Peyton, for those questions. I think I just saw Frank had just joined us. Thank you for joining us as well. So, all right. Good conversation so far. Any other comments or thoughts on this? I'll just keep the floor open.
Hey, sorry, what's the subject for today? I'm sorry.
We had started talking about strategic finance, and they're here. We're just kind of talking about that right now with those guys, asking some questions. That's where we're at.
Okay. Has anybody brought up the possibility of strategic finance working on automation for the future in case, you know, they get rich and they retire? I'm being sarcastic, but no, you know, the goal of MakerDAO, in my opinion, should involve full automation. So I'm wondering if you guys have thought about, you know, if the MetaDAO, the end game gets implemented, if that's one of the things you're thinking about, and what's your approach there? Because it feels like all the tooling that you guys have belongs to you guys, right? So if you decide to, you know, write off to the sunset, for lack of a better word, the DAO is going to be stuck without any of that tooling.
Yeah, I think automation is a huge thing that we're focused on. We want to do, and you know, thankfully the PE guys are quite interested in automating where possible as well. So you know, I know Rune is desiring to accumulate a lot of ETH or STETH. I'm not sure if I'm assuming that we can set up DSS Kiln to do that permissionlessly without like anyone interfering manually touching it. You just set up to purchase X amount of ETH over Y time period, and then I feel like we can also in the future kind of automate how the protocol on Vault accumulates assets. And I think Rune's thinking is evolving constantly on this, but I imagine that we're going to have a subset of like stablecoin LPs as well, that the DAO can just basically permissionlessly buy USDC, for example, pair it with DAI, and then just like drop it into a smart contract that's automating the management of it, like compounding fees, like GUnity does. So I think there's a lot of ways to automate in the future, and that some that we can even do today. And then lastly, I'll just touch on that we are constantly building Dune queries. Seb has one that's completely public that has a nice summary. We just posted a list of all of our Dune dashboards that we've worked on for Maker. It's also public. I can make a separate post for that just so it's more broadly disseminated. But all that work is, it's fully automated. Anyone that just goes to Dune's website can refresh the query themselves. They don't have to pay for a membership. And then the information will just update, and you can see, the financials, you can see different like KPIs, like DAI compared to other stable coins. You can see like Vault market share for ETH and Rep Bitcoin. But we're definitely working on building more stuff, and we're definitely open to feedback from the community if there's certain things they want to see. That's completely open.
Thank you, Mark. does anyone have any other comments or follow-up questions on that?
Yeah, for me regarding automation, because like I think my a little bit confusion is about what strategic finance's goals are, and I think like for me, I'm looking a lot at budgets, and I still have no place where I can go and I just see, okay, this is that budget, this is that budget. This is delivered, this is not delivered, these are the streams. And I'm sure you guys are working on that, but then like we get these kind of PDFs from time to time, and I would just love to see something where you're kind of working towards a place where you're automating yourself away, right?
So these are in the operating expense reports that we post monthly. I can share a link to you, but it shows every single core unit, budget for every single core unit, as well as off-chain actual expenses. So
yeah,
that's actually.
I know those ones, right? But like this seems like still involving a lot of manual work.
There is indeed a lot of manual work involved in the expenses. I think, we want to automate the expense work, and I think longer term there are ways that you can do it. But our objective within strategic finance is to provide transparency to the financial health of the DAO, as well as add value for MKR holders. And we've been heavily working on with the growth team on some ways that we can do that, and that'll also be a smooth transition into the endgame plan and MetaDAOs. So we're really excited for these deals to be and products to be shared with the community. I think next week we'll have at least the first one public. I'm happy to share that the details with delegates privately, as some of them have already seen, but due to these projects kind of still being in the works, we can't fully disclose everything publicly yet.
So my question is, basically, maybe you already answered that. Basically, you're working on this solution for the DAO to have a really good and comprehensive budgeting and accounting framework that is at least somewhat autonomous in the future, right?
Yeah, I mean, we are. I would like to invest more in building out literally the DeFi standards for accounting. Frankly, given how little other DAOs do, we're already seen as the leader in this across the industry, both by reputable hedge funds as well as leading academic institutions where our work has been cited. So we're definitely on a mission to continue improving that. I don't know how that ranks in terms of Rune's priority vis-a-vis the endgame plan. Obviously, my last budget request to hire an actual accountant to specifically work on that sort of stuff full time was rejected. Obviously impacted by the DAO's financial situation in the bear market. But yeah, we definitely want to continue to improve the financial reports, continue to automate them. That's heavy focus for Adrian and Dan on the team. But frankly, it's something where we're already seen as a leader, and there's other areas that we can add a lot more value that we're spending time on.
When it comes to, I think, so we had this conversation offline, Rafael, around sort of how we think about accounting standards. And I think the nascency of the space means that there are basically no rules. And it's our job to try and interpret smart contract calls and interactions in the closest possible way so that a broad community can understand them in reasonably unsophisticated financial terms that they're already used to. And a lot of what we're going to do this month is put a summary of some of the assumptions that we make and link them to the calls so that you can see step by step. It's very simple at the moment because our business is relatively straightforward, even though the web of contract is quite complex. But I think this is kind of what you're alluding to in terms of developing accounting standards. Like, there are implied standards, we do follow them, and we'll make them explicit in this month's reports so that people can understand that from start to finish how we generate every day. But then as far as, so Mark just shared an annualized budget spreadsheet. I think if you have any specific queries, we're always happy to address anything that comes from, and a final point, anything that's off-chain will probably rely on some amount of manual interaction. And almost all of the governance processes through the MIPS system are basically social contracts that happen off-chain. Like the approval and the MIPS and everything are voted on, sure, but the concept of a budget is a social contract. The actual execution of that DSS vest is the only thing you can rely on chain. And as long as you rely on that, you can draw from June queries, Web3, API interfaces, whatever. Or Flipside Crypto. I understand you have an app. We need to dig into it still.
Okay, thanks. That already kind of answers. Like for me, it was always a little bit difficult to just understand where you're coming from, but I think Mark answered that really well. Like that you are kind of leading that space in a way, but for me, I think there's still a lot of room to grow in just this budgeting and accounting. And I think it could also be a great product, right? Like, I think there's a huge market out there for these solutions. So, I was just not clear where your priorities were.
Yeah, I mean, I also note that SES is actively working on this, and they have a new budgeting tool that people are starting to use. You know, there's a lot of work being done like across the DAO. And obviously we have a very, I think, small budget relative to other core units. And yeah, there's always room for improvement. That's something that, you know, we want to do every day, is find ways to improve. It's just like, for us, it comes down to a matter of, yeah, Juan just linked it if you want to take a look at it. You know, we're really just trying to add the most value to maker holders as possible when we think about work prioritization and, you know, automating reports on top of what's already available on Dune that we have is, you know, we don't feel it's adding as much value as other initiatives.
All right, thank you, Mark. Yes, he pointed out that Juan just posted the link in the chat. Thank you for that. Do we have any other questions or comments regarding this? These questions. Open the floor to anyone else. Mark, Adrian, do you guys have any other questions or comments?
Happy to address any issues, or if you guys think we should abstain from certain things. Obviously, I'm not going to comment on Rune's proposal to acquire a lot of Maker for Lido, even though we're not formally engaged at this time, and his strategy for the balance sheet. We're certainly going to model how that'll impact the financials. If Rune decides we need to buy like 100 million, 200 million, 500 million of ETH, like how is that going to impact the protocol's financial health? Those are all things that we're going to spend time modeling on. I think once he discloses more of his vision for how he wants the protocol to decentralize further over time, it's going to be a lot of, I think, work and expertise from Sebastian. But I think as we look to transition to MakerDAO, there's a lot of like budget stuff that Rune's working on that I think will be shared as well soon. There's these commercial partnerships coming. There's a ton of things that are, and then Rune is constantly thinking about how much ETH should we acquire, like leveraging it to buy more. These are all things that we need to consider to protect DAI holders and ensure the protocol is as healthy as possible. So yeah, I think the risk team will probably also be involved in looking at these factors. But yeah, definitely something that will be important for us.
All right. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. I've got a couple of things popping up here in the chat. One is Robert is asking about commercial relationships are coming, question mark. Just wanted to put that out there for feedback.
Yeah, sure. So similar to real finance, I'm sure Robert in his position, people even growth or really any core unit, if there's people that work at other companies, crypto or outside of crypto, they want to work with Maker, and people reach out. And I started working with Nadia and Jen from Growth when Institutional Vaults first became a product to help ensure that Maker, we could model the financial implications of any deals that were struck and any MIPS that were forthcoming, as well as help fight for Maker holders and make sure that the DAO got very strong terms. Because I think historically some people will come to the DAO and obviously they're going to request the best deal for them, and if you're not modeling out the request from counterparties, you could get stuck with a deal that's not very economically strong for Maker. So we've kind of been brought in at the request of Growth to help ensure that Maker is getting a fair end of the stick when these proposals are coming down. Obviously, we're just offering our opinion on that. It's the counterparties can do whatever they want, but Maker holders will ultimately decide what will be onboarded, what's the importance of it. But nevertheless, we want to make sure that Maker's financial health is protected, and that we're not getting people trying to take advantage of us.
All right, thank you, Mark. Just of note, Juan just added to the chat. He posted the forum. I think this is MakerDAO expenses dashboard is live post in the forum. So just letting everyone know. So with that, I'm going to open the floor back up to see if the delegates here have any more questions or comments for this discussion. With that said, we've got, I think this is going to be brought over to the GNR call on our discussion today. So I think we're going to have that as well. So you'll be able to join us. That'd be great to continue this conversation. And now I'd just like to open the floor to any other topics that we'd like to discuss. Maybe end game call yesterday, or any live vote. I'll just open the floor to see if anybody has. Tim.
I'll just echo something. Hey, y'all. I'll just echo something Mark said earlier, which is just that things are extraordinarily fluid right now, in case you just have been living under a rock on the forums, but more broadly for any other audience person who happens to catch this on YouTube, of like 10 people who watch these. It's really important to just zoom out and try and capture if people have best intentions, which the one thing I've noticed with Maker, it tends to be that people's hearts are in the right place, even if they don't communicate what that happens to be. There are some specific forum posts that might articulate that point of view a little bit more. But again, I just think that September is going to be a really active month. And if we try to aspire to something better and provide better comments on where things are going and be more direct in feedback to improve, I think we'll all be in a better place. But if we start spending all this time thinking people are acting with bad intentions and trying to be like inherently selfish, I think we're going to end up in a worse place. And so I would just advocate that we try and shine a light on things that seem unclear and be positive. At least that's what I'm going to try and do. So that's it. you know, I think in the context of this whole Lido thing, to me, it just seems like someone made a decision to wait until a vote was passed to then tell Maker or some other community. They like people work for other DAOs everywhere else, right? It just was a communication gap, right? It was one decision that then spiraled because people reacted. And I understand both sides of that argument, but ultimately, like strategically, it kind of makes a lot of sense and people can work wherever they want. That's the point of DAOs. So yeah, I mean, I think we all learned a lesson in transparency and being more clear with each other today, but that's about all I have to say. So sorry for the platitudes.
Thank you, Tim, for those comments. Appreciate that. All right, I'm going to continue to open the floor to see if anyone else has any additional comments, questions. Again, we're going to be open to any suggestions. We still got about 10 or so minutes left in the meeting today, so I want to make sure everybody gets their say or input. All right. Any other topics that we'd like to touch on for the last few minutes? Any thoughts on the end game meeting from yesterday? Any other thoughts on that? There was a lot that's been going on with that as well. So. Okay. All right. Well, water break. Yeah, absolutely. I hope you could join us. Thank you all for joining us today with no other feedback. We'll just wrap it up here for today and hopefully see you on the GNR call here shortly. Thank you for joining us and hope to see you very soon.